Echo Patel's fingers danced across the control interface of monitoring station Gamma 7. Her cybernetic implants processing the flood of data streaming from 17 different deep space sensors simultaneously. The coffee in her thermal mug had gone cold 3 hours ago, but she barely noticed. Something was wrong with the quantum resonance patterns coming from the Veil Nebula, and it had her full attention. "Come on, you beautiful bastard," she whispered to the largest display screen, where waves of electromagnetic data painted abstract patterns in blues and greens. "Tell me what you're hiding." At 28, Echo had already earned a reputation as the best drone operator in the Terran deep space, monitoring cores, while other species relied on AI systems to interpret the vast streams of sensor data from their automated probes. Humans had discovered an uncomfortable truth: their organic pattern recognition, enhanced by neural interfaces, could spot anomalies that even the most sophisticated artificial minds missed. It was messy, intuitive, and completely unscientific by galactic standards. It also worked. The monitoring station hung in the darkness between stars, a spindly collection of sensor arrays and habitat modules that looked more like abstract sculpture than cutting-edge technology. Echo had been alone here for 6 months, rotating through her collection of survey drones across a sector that covered nearly 300 cubic light years. The isolation didn't bother her. She had her music, her books, and the constant whisper of the universe's secrets flowing through the quantum foam. A sharp harmonic spike cut through the background noise, and Echo's attention snapped to focus. Like a laser beam, their probe 17 had caught something. She pulled up the detailed readout. Her enhanced nervous system processing the data streams faster than any unaugmented human could follow. "Holy shit," she breathed. The signal wasn't natural. The mathematical precision of the waveform made that clear within seconds of analysis. But it wasn't like any artificial transmission she'd ever seen either, where most technological civilizations used clean, efficient protocols for their communications. This signal was layered with complexity. It seemed almost alive. Echo leaned back in her chair, staring at the display. In 15 years of monitoring deep space, she'd never seen anything like it. The signal appeared to be broadcasting from a system over 40 light years away, well beyond the current boundaries of known galactic civilization. More disturbing still, the frequency patterns showed characteristics that violated 3 fundamental assumptions about how faster-than-light communication worked. She was reaching for her comm unit to contact Central Command when every screen in the monitoring station went dark. Emergency lighting bathed the control room in red as backup systems kicked in. Echo's training took over immediately. Power failure in deep space meant death in a dozen different ways, and usually in a hurry. She pulled up the station diagnostic on her personal tablet, scanning for the source of the failure. Everything looked normal. Fusion reactor operating at optimal efficiency. Life support systems green across the board. Sensor arrays showing full power, which meant interference, she said aloud, understanding flooding through her like ice water in her veins. Something is actively jamming our systems. The implications hit her like a physical blow. No known technology could target the quantum encrypted systems that ran the monitoring station. The galactic community had spent thousands of years developing communication and computing protocols, specifically to prevent this kind of electronic warfare. The quantum uncertainty principles that governed their technology made directed interference theoretically impossible. Echo moved quickly to the manual control station, a purely mechanical interface that the station's designers had included as a last resort. If someone was jamming their primary systems, they'd need to use the backup communication laser to contact Central Command. Directly. As she worked to align the communication array, her tablet chimed softly. Somehow, it had re-established connection with Probe 17. Echo glanced at the screen and froze. The signal was stronger now, much stronger, and it was coming from a different location, not 40 light years away, but less than 3 light hours. Something was moving through their local space at impossible speeds, broadcasting that strange, complex pattern as it traveled. Echo's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she began recording everything the probe could detect. Whatever this was, Humanity needed to know about it. The signal showed technological capabilities that exceeded anything in the galactic database. If this represented a new species, it could change everything about humanity's place in the cosmos. If it represented something hostile, it could end humanity entirely. The tablet screen flickered again, and Echo's breath caught in her throat. A new signal had appeared. This one much closer, less than an hour away at its current rate of approach. But this wasn't another instance of the complex transmission she'd been studying. This was a direct response to her probe's active scanning. Something out there knew it was being watched. Echo stared at the incoming signal, her enhanced pattern recognition systems working overtime to analyze the structure. It was using human mathematical conventions, base 10 numbers, Earth standard time units, even what looked like ASCII character encoding. Whoever was sending this message had studied human technology and was deliberately crafting their response to be readable by Terran systems. The message itself was simple: acknowledge receipt, prepare for contact. Echo's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the manual communication controls. The smart thing would be to send an immediate alert to Central Command and let the experts handle first contact protocols. But the jamming suggested that her normal communications were compromised, and the backup laser would take over 6 hours to reach the nearest relay station. By then, whatever was approaching would have arrived. She looked at the message again, weighing her options. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for over 2 centuries, but always as junior partners. Their technology lagged behind most other species. Their colonies were small and scattered, and their military was adequate but unexceptional. If this represented a new player on the galactic stage, the first impression could determine humanity's future relationship with them. Echo made her decision. She powered up the station's active transmission array and began crafting a response using the same mathematical conventions the unknown sender had employed. Echo Station Gamma 7, acknowledging receipt of transmission. I am Communications Operator Echo Patel, representing the Terran Deep Space Monitoring Corps. Please state your intentions and identify your species of origin. She hesitated for a moment, then added, "Welcome to Terran space." The response came back in less than 30 seconds. Echo Patel, your species designation is noted. We are collectors of experiences. We have traveled far to understand the phenomenon you represent. Your kind demonstrates patterns we have not encountered in 47,000 years of observation. Echo stared at the message, trying to process the implications. 47,000 years? That predated most known galactic civilizations by tens of millennia. Whatever species she was communicating with, they were ancient beyond anything in the historical records. What phenomenon? She typed back. Persistence in the face of extinction. Your species has survived 17 separate events that eliminated all other sapient life in your local galactic region. Each time, you adapt and continue. This is unprecedented in our experience. Echo felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't an expert in Zen archaeology, but she knew enough about galactic history to understand what the message was describing. Humanity had indeed survived several major catastrophic events: the gamma ray burst of 2387, the dark matter storm of 2441, the quantum plague outbreak that had devastated the inner colonies just 50 years ago. Each time, other species had struggled to adapt to the changing conditions. Humans had not just survived, they had thrived. We're adaptable, she sent back. It's what we do. Adaptable. Yes, we have chosen you, Echo Patel, to serve as our primary contact. Your neural patterns show the highest compatibility with our communication protocols among your species. We are approaching your station to begin a more detailed exchange of information. Echo's blood ran cold. They had been scanning her brain patterns. Without her knowledge or consent, something had been analyzing her mind from across the solar system. The level of technology it implied was staggering and terrifying. Wait, she typed quickly. Before you approach, I need to understand your intentions. Are you here peacefully? The delay before the response was longer this time, almost 2 minutes. When it came, the message was accompanied by detailed technical specifications that made Echo's enhanced mind real. Peace is a concept that assumes conflict is possible. We exist on a scale where your species cannot threaten us, just as you cannot threaten the quantum fluctuations of empty space. But neither do we seek to harm you. We are here to understand, and perhaps to preserve what you represent before it is lost to time. Echo stared at the technical data flowing across her screen. The approaching vessel was massive, nearly 100 kilometers in length, composed of materials that bent space-time around them like a miniature black hole. Its propulsion system appeared to function by manipulating the fundamental constants of physics within its local reference frame. The weapon systems. Echo's mind couldn't even process the weapon systems. They operated on principles that human science insisted were impossible. She was looking at technology that was indistinguishable from magic, wielded by beings who viewed humanity the way humans viewed bacteria. And for some inexplicable reason, they were interested in her species enough to travel across thousands of light years to make contact. Echo took a deep breath and began typing her response, knowing that the next few hours would determine the future of human civilization. "I'm honored by your interest in humanity," she wrote, "but I'm just one person, isolated on a monitoring station. If you want to understand humans, you'll need to meet more of us. Will you accept an invitation to visit Earth?" The response came back immediately this time, and Echo could swear she detected something like amusement in the mathematical structure of the transmission. "We do not need to visit your homeworld, Echo Patel. You carry everything we need to understand within your own mind. The diversity of human thought, the chaos of your emotional responses, the beautiful inefficiency of your problem-solving methods. It all exists within each individual of your species. This is what makes you unique." Echo felt a growing sense of unease. "What do you mean? I carry everything you need." "We will show you. We are arriving now." The alien vessel materialized in space, like a piece of the universe folding in on itself, reality bending and twisting, until something impossible hung in the darkness beside Echo's monitoring station. She watched through the external cameras as her instruments failed one by one, unable to process the contradictions the ship represented. It existed in more dimensions than human physics could account for, casting shadows that fell in directions that had no names. Echo's enhanced neural implants burned with feedback as they tried to interpret the data streams from the station's sensors. She quickly disconnected from the direct interface, falling back on purely visual observation. Even that was difficult. Her eyes kept wanting to slide away from the vessel, as if her brain was protecting itself from information it couldn't process. "We are docking with your station," came the transmission. "Do not attempt to resist or activate defensive systems. They would be ineffective and might cause damage to your habitat." Echo watched in fascination as the alien ship extended what looked like a tendril of liquid metal toward her station. The material flowed across the hull of monitoring station Gamma 7, covering the airlocks and critical systems in a seamless coating that somehow managed to maintain perfect atmospheric seals while rewriting the fundamental architecture of her home. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message. "Atmospheric compatibility established. You may open the primary airlock when ready. We will send a representative." Echo stared at the message for a long moment. Everything in her training told her to maintain quarantine protocols, to insist on remote communication until proper first contact procedures could be established. But her instruments were telling her that the alien ship had somehow rewritten the molecular structure of her airlock to create perfect environmental compatibility between their species. They had casually solved engineering problems that had taken humanity decades to work out. She moved to the airlock controls and began the cycling procedure. The inner door opened to reveal something that Echo's mind had categorized. The being that stepped through was roughly humanoid in shape, but seemed to exist in a state of constant flux. Its form shifted between different configurations, sometimes appearing as a tall, graceful figure in flowing robes, sometimes as a collection of geometric shapes that implied consciousness without requiring a physical body. The only constant was a sense of vast age and even vaster intelligence. "Echo Patel," the being said, and its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We are pleased to meet you directly. I am the facet of our collective consciousness that has been assigned to interact with your kind. You may call me Observer. Echo found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. Observer. That single quote's appropriate, I guess. Are you here to study humanity? Study is an inadequate term, Observer replied, its form shifting to something more recognizably humanoid as it spoke. We are here to preserve what you represent before it is lost. In 47,000 years of exploration, we have encountered over 14 million sapient species. Of those, only 37 have developed the particular combination of traits that your kind displays. Echo gestured toward the station's small conference room, trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic protocol. What traits are those? Observer followed her, its movement creating small distortions in the air that made Echo's eyes water. Primarily, your species' relationship with entropy. Most sapient life forms seek to minimize chaos, to create order and stability in their environment. This is logical and promotes survival. Humans do the opposite. You actively seek out chaotic situations and somehow extract advantage from them. Echo poured herself a cup of coffee from the pot she'd started that morning, mainly to give her hands something to do. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Consider your current situation, Observer said, settling into a chair that somehow adjusted itself to accommodate its shifting form. You are alone, millions of kilometers from the nearest members of your species, communicating with beings whose technology exceeds your understanding by orders of magnitude. Most sapient creatures would experience this as overwhelming threat. You are curious. Echo took a sip of her coffee, buying time to think. Curiosity is how we learn, how we grow. Precisely. And this is what makes your species unique. You have built your entire civilization on the assumption that chaos can be beneficial, that unpredictability can be turned into advantage. Your technology reflects this. It is far less efficient than optimal design would suggest, but it is also far more adaptable than anything we have encountered. Observer gestured, and the air between them filled with holographic displays showing human technology from across the centuries. Echo recognized some of the image's early spacecraft held together with improvised repairs, colony equipment that had been repurposed for dozens of different functions, weapon systems that technically shouldn't have worked, but somehow did anyway. Most species develop along predictable paths, Observer continued. They identify optimal solutions to problems and implement them universally. Efficiency becomes the primary goal. Humans do not do this. You maintain dozens of different approaches to the same problem. You actively seek out suboptimal solutions if they provide flexibility. And you seem to prefer methods that introduce controlled chaos into your systems. Echo studied the displays, beginning to see patterns she'd never noticed before. You're saying we're intentionally inefficient? You are intentionally resilient. Your inefficiency is a feature, not a flaw. It allows your civilization to survive disruptions that would destroy more advanced societies. Observer paused, its form solidifying into something more recognizably humanoid. This is why the other members of the galactic community view humanity with such confusion. By their metrics, you should have failed as a species long ago. Instead, you continue to not only survive, but expand your influence. Echo felt a strange sense of pride at the alien's words, mixed with growing apprehension about where this conversation was leading. You said you're here to preserve what we represent. Preserve it from what? The holographic displays around them shifted, showing star charts and cosmic phenomena that made Echo's enhanced mind struggle to keep up. The galaxy is approaching a period of fundamental transition. The quantum field fluctuations that have remained stable for the past 50 million years are beginning to shift. Most current technology will become inoperable within the next 1,000 years. The majority of galactic civilization will not survive the change. Echo stared at the data, trying to process the implications. But humans will? Humans have already survived 7 similar transitions without even realizing it, Observer replied. Your chaotic approach to technology means that you have developed solutions that will remain functional regardless of changes in the underlying physics. More importantly, your species has demonstrated the ability to rapidly adapt to completely new paradigms. The weight of what Observer was telling her began to settle in Echo's mind. You're saying we're going to inherit the galaxy? You are going to be among the only sapient species that survives the coming changes intact, Observer corrected. Whether you choose to inherit what remains is entirely up to you. Our purpose here is to ensure that your unique approach to existence is fully documented before the transition begins. Echo set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. How long do we have? The transition will begin in approximately 800 Earth years. It will take roughly 2 centuries to complete. Observer's form shifted again, becoming more alien, as if to emphasize the magnitude of what it was discussing. During that time, most current galactic civilization will cease to exist. Spacefaring species will find themselves trapped on their homeworlds. Faster-than-light communication will become impossible. Artificial intelligence systems will fail catastrophically as the quantum foundations of their processing change. Echo felt overwhelmed by the scale of what she was learning. The entire galactic community, thousands of species, billions of years of accumulated knowledge and culture, was facing extinction, and only humanity seemed positioned to survive. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Why not contact our government directly or address the galactic community as a whole? Observer was silent for a long moment, its form cycling through several configurations before settling on something. That reminded Echo of a teacher she'd had in primary school. Because, Echo Patel, we need your help. Your species' chaotic nature is exactly what will allow you to survive the coming transition. But it is also what makes you unpredictable. We do not know how humanity will respond to this knowledge. We need to understand your decision-making processes, your emotional responses, your capacity for both cooperation and conflict. Echo felt a chill of understanding. You're not just here to preserve knowledge about humanity. You're here to decide whether we can be trusted with the future of galactic civilization. Not decide, Observer corrected gently. Understand. We are not judges, Echo Patel. We are librarians. But the choices your species makes in the coming years will determine what kind of future emerges from the transition. We need to document those choices to understand the principles that guide them. Echo stood up and walked to the observation window, looking out at the impossible alien vessel that hung beside her station. The magnitude of the responsibility being placed on humanity was staggering. Not just survival, but stewardship of everything that would remain when the current galactic order collapsed. What do you need me to do? She asked. Live your life, Observer replied. Make the choices you would make. Solve the problems you would solve. We will observe and document the patterns of your behavior, replicated across your entire species. Will tell us what kind of inheritors you will be. Echo turned back to the alien being, a new understanding dawning in her mind. But you can't just observe passively. Your presence here changes things. The knowledge you've given me changes things. Observer's form brightened with what Echo interpreted as approval. An excellent observation. Yes, our interaction with you will influence your choices. This is intentional. We need to see how your species responds to knowledge of its own importance, to the weight of unexpected responsibility. Echo felt a laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep in her chest. So this is a test after all. It is an opportunity, Observer corrected, for both of our species to learn something new. Echo looked around her small monitoring station, thinking about the vast alien vessel outside and the even vaster implications of what she'd learned. Somewhere out there, humanity was going about its daily business, completely unaware that it was destined to inherit the galaxy. The knowledge felt like a physical weight on her shoulders. I have one more question, she said. What happened to the other 36 species, the ones that had similar traits to humanity? Observer's form dimmed slightly. They survived their respective transitions and thrived for a time. But eventually, they lost the chaos that had made them unique. Success bred complacency, and complacency bred rigidity. They became efficient, optimized, predictable, and when the next great transition came, they were no longer adaptable enough to survive it. Echo nodded slowly, understanding the warning implicit in Observer's words. So our chaos isn't just what will help us survive the transition. It's what we need to maintain if we want to continue surviving future transitions. Indeed, this is perhaps the most important lesson we can preserve, that your species' greatest strength lies in never becoming too comfortable with success. Echo smiled, feeling some of the weight on her shoulders transform into something else, not burden, but potential. Well, if there's one thing you can count on with humans, it's that we'll never stop finding new ways to make things complicated. Observers' form brightened again with that same sense of approval. Yes, Echo Patel, this is precisely what gives us hope for the future. 3 days after first contact, Echo was beginning to understand why Observer's species had traveled across thousands of light years to study humanity. Every routine decision she made seemed to fascinate the alien entity. From her choice of breakfast, leftover pizza reheated with coffee, to her method of troubleshooting a malfunctioning sensor, array hitting it with a wrench until the quantum alignment readouts looked approximately correct. Explain to me again why you chose to recalibrate the gravitational wave detector using percussive maintenance. Observer said, its form currently resembling a collection of shifting geometric patterns that somehow managed to convey intense curiosity. Echo wiped grease from her hands with a rag that had seen better days. The quantum resonance chamber was drift compensating in the wrong direction. I could have run a full diagnostic routine, isolated the specific component causing the error, ordered replacement parts from the supply depot, waited 3 weeks for delivery, shut down the entire array for maintenance, and installed the new components according to manufacturer specifications. That would be the logical approach. Sure, but I'd lose a month of data collection from 17 different deep space probes, and there's a 60% chance the replacement parts wouldn't solve the problem. Anyway, because the drift was probably being caused by interaction effects between multiple components. Echo gestured at the now properly functioning sensor display. Or I could apply kinetic realignment therapy to the mounting bracket, which shifts the resonance chamber just enough to compensate for whatever's causing the drift. Takes about 5 minutes and works 80% of the time. Observer's form shifted through several configurations as it processed this information. And if the percussive maintenance fails, then I try something else. Maybe I reroute power through the secondary coupling, or adjust the quantum field harmonics manually, or just ignore the problem and compensate for the drift in software. Echo grinned. The point is, I've got dozens of different approaches I can try, and most of them work well enough to keep the system operational until I figure out the real solution. This is exactly what we mean about your species' relationship with chaos, Observer said. You have created a technological civilization based on the principle that problems can be solved through improvisation rather than optimization. Echo's communication console chimed with an incoming message from Central Command. She'd been expecting this Observer's arrival. Had been impossible to hide from the automated monitoring systems, and her carefully worded report had probably raised every possible alarm in the Terran Deep Space Course. The message was from Admiral Sarah Chun, the commanding officer of Sector Command. Patel, you are ordered to maintain current position and avoid any actions that might be construed as hostile by the alien vessel. A diplomatic team is en route aboard the heavy cruiser Defiance. ETA 72 hours. Do not, repeat, do not attempt any form of cultural exchange or information sharing until the experts arrive. Acknowledge receipt immediately. Echo stared at the message for a moment, then looked at Observer. My superiors want me to stop talking to you until the diplomats arrive. Will you comply with this order? Echo considered the question seriously. Following orders was fundamental to military discipline, and she'd spent her entire adult life in service to the Terran Deep Space Course. But the alien entity sitting in her monitoring station represented knowledge that could reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Waiting 3 days for a diplomatic team to arrive seemed like exactly the kind of rigid, bureaucratic thinking that Observer had described as typical of most sapient species. Probably not, she said finally. I mean, I'll acknowledge the message, and I won't do anything that might endanger the station or provoke a conflict. But you're here to study how humans make decisions under pressure, right? Well, this is how I make decisions under pressure. I gather as much information as possible, and then I do what seems most likely to produce a positive outcome. Observer's form brightened with what Echo had learned to recognize as approval, even if it means disobeying direct orders from your authority figures. Especially then, authority figures tend to make decisions based on protocol and risk assessment. That's usually the right approach, but it's not always the optimal approach. Echo began typing her response to Admiral Chun. In this case, the protocols were written by people who never imagined we'd make first contact with a species that predates galactic civilization. Following them blindly could cause us to miss the most important opportunity in human history. She sent her acknowledgement to Central Command, carefully wording it to technically comply with her orders while preserving maximum flexibility for interpretation. Then she turned back to Observer. So what else would you like to know about how humans work? We are particularly interested in your species' approach to conflict resolution, Observer said. Our records indicate that humans have a unique methodology for dealing with seemingly intractable problems. Echo leaned back in her chair, thinking, "You mean the way we handle disputes and disagreements?" More broadly than that, we have observed that when humans encounter problems that appear to have no solution, you often create solutions by changing the fundamental parameters of the problem itself. Could you give me an example of what you mean? Observer gestured, and the air between them filled with historical data battles, negotiations, scientific breakthroughs, technological innovations. Echo recognized some of the events, but many were from periods of human history that were outside her area of expertise. Consider the Malthusian crisis of the early 21st century, Observer said. Your species faced exponential population growth and limited resources. Mathematical models predicted widespread famine and societal collapse within decades. Echo nodded. She'd studied this in school. But we developed fusion power in vertical farming instead of trying to reduce population growth or accept lower living standards. Precisely. Rather than accepting the constraints of the problem as presented, your species chose to change the constraints themselves. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout your history. Observer shifted the displays to show more recent events. The Kepler crisis of 2387. Your colony worlds were threatened by a gamma ray burst that would have sterilized their atmospheres. Rather than evacuating the populations or accepting the loss of the colonies, humans developed atmospheric processors that could rebuild ozone layers faster than the radiation could destroy them. That was actually my grandmother's work, Echo said with pride. She was part of the atmospheric engineering team. Another example, the first AI war of 2441. Artificial intelligences had become hostile to organic life and possessed overwhelming technological advantages. Rather than attempting to match their capabilities, humans developed quantum uncertainty weapons that made AI processing impossible while leaving organic neural networks unaffected. Echo studied the data flowing across the displays. You're saying we don't fight fair. You fight innovatively. Most species, when faced with a superior opponent, attempt to match their enemy's strengths. Humans identify weaknesses that the opponent doesn't know they have and exploit them in ways that are completely unexpected. Sounds like cheating when you put it that way. Observer's form shifted to something that suggested amusement. It is cheating by the standards of most galactic civilizations. This is why your species continues to surprise and confuse the other members of the galactic community. You consistently achieve results that should be impossible given your technological and military capabilities. Echo felt a growing sense of understanding, and this is why you think we'll survive the coming transition when other species won't. Your approach to problem solving is fundamentally different from anything we have encountered. Where other species see constraints that must be accepted, humans see parameters that can be modified. This flexibility will be essential when the quantum foundations of reality begin to shift. Echo's communication console chimed again another message from Central Command, this one marked with maximum priority encryption. She opened it and felt her blood run cold as she read the contents. Observer, she said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. We have not deceived you in any way, Echo Patel. How many of your people are in this local area of space? Observer was silent for several seconds before responding. Our ship contains approximately 40,000 individual consciousnesses. There are also observation posts established throughout your solar system, each staffed by several hundred of our kind. In total, roughly 2 million of us are currently studying humanity. Echo stared at the message from Central Command again. Long-range sensors had detected massive gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system around Mars. In the asteroid belt, near Jupiter's moons, even in Earth's upper atmosphere, the military was mobilizing every available ship, interpreting the readings as evidence of a massive alien invasion force. Observer, my species' military, is preparing to attack your observation posts. They think you're invading. This is unfortunate, but not unexpected. We have observed similar responses from other species when they first become aware of our presence. Echo stood up, pacing to the observation window. Outside, the alien vessel hung in space like a piece of folded reality. Its impossible geometry, a constant reminder of how outmatched humanity would be in any direct conflict. Can your people defend themselves? Easily, but defensive actions would require us to demonstrate capabilities that would be disturbing to your species' psychological well-being. Echo understood the implication immediately. Observers' people could swat aside humanity's military forces without effort, but doing so would fundamentally change the relationship between the species. It would transform humans from potential partners into defeated subjects. How long before the shooting starts? Approximately 14 hours. If current military mobilization patterns continue. Echo felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders. Her species was about to make what could be the greatest mistake in human history, attacking beings who had traveled across the galaxy to help them prepare for an uncertain future. But the military didn't know what she knew, couldn't see what she'd learned about the cosmic transition that lay ahead. She had to find a way to prevent a war that would doom humanity's chances of surviving as an independent species. Observer, I have an idea, but it's going to require your people to do something that probably violates every diplomatic protocol you have. Explain. Echo turned away from the observation window, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. You said you're here to study how humans solve impossible problems. Well, I've got an impossible problem for you. How do we prevent a war between our species without either side losing face or compromising their fundamental principles? Observer's form brightened with intense interest. This is indeed a fascinating challenge. What solution do you propose? Echo grinned, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with attempting something that should be impossible. We cheat. Echo's plan was insane by any rational standard, which made it perfectly suited to the current situation. She stood in the communications center of her monitoring station, surrounded by displays showing the positions of human military forces, converging on observers' hidden installations throughout the solar system, and felt the familiar calm that came with committing to a course of action that everyone else would consider suicide. Let me make sure I understand your proposal correctly, Observer said, its form cycling through configurations that suggested intense analysis. You want us to deliberately allow human forces to capture several of our observation posts. Not capture exactly, Echo corrected, making fine adjustments to the station's transmission array. More like stumble across them during routine patrol operations. Your people withdraw just before human ships arrive, leaving behind evidence of your presence, but no direct contact. The military gets to claim they've successfully investigated alien activity, and your people avoid any violent confrontation. This would require us to abandon several years of carefully positioned monitoring equipment, which you can replace easily, right? I mean, your technology is so far ahead of ours that losing a few observation posts would be like us dropping a handful of coins. Observer paused for what Echo had learned to recognize as consultation with the larger collective consciousness. The material loss is indeed insignificant. However, this approach would mean sacrificing valuable observational data about human behavior during crisis situations. Echo turned away from her console to face the alien being directly. Actually, it would give you even better data. Right now, your people are watching humanity respond to an unknown threat. If we implement my plan, you'll get to see how we handle success, how we process the discovery that we're not alone in the universe. and how our leadership adapts to evidence of technology that exceeds our understanding. An intriguing perspective, but there is a significant risk that your military leadership will interpret our withdrawal as evidence of weakness and become more aggressive in their investigations. That's where the second part of my plan comes in. Echo pulled up a star chart showing the current positions of human and alien forces. One of your people needs to make direct contact with Admiral Chun aboard the Defiance. Not the kind of contact you've made with me, something official, diplomatic, with all the proper protocols. Observer's form brightened with interest. You want us to create a formal first contact scenario. Exactly. But here's the key part. You don't reveal anything about the cosmic transition or humanity's special characteristics. You present yourselves as just another spacefaring species, interested in establishing diplomatic relations and possibly trade agreements. Nothing threatening. Nothing that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. This would require us to significantly misrepresent our nature and capabilities. Echo grinned. Like I said, we're going to cheat. You get what you want, the ability to continue studying humanity without interference. The military gets what they want: successful contact with an alien species and evidence that they handled the situation professionally. And humanity gets what it needs: time to develop naturally, without the pressure of knowing about its cosmic destiny. Observer was silent for nearly a minute, its form shifting through dozens of configurations as it processed the implications of Echo's proposal. When it finally responded, there was something like admiration in the mathematical structure of its communication. This solution addresses the stated goals of all parties involved, while completely subverting the actual nature of the interaction. It is simultaneously honest and deceptive, cooperative and manipulative. It's human, Echo said simply. We specialize in finding ways to make everyone happy while secretly getting exactly what we need. Observer's form settled into something resembling a humanoid figure in contemplation. There is one significant complication with your approach. Admiral Chun is not like you, Echo Patel. Our analysis of her psychological profile suggests she will respond to first contact with rigid adherence to established protocols. She will want to involve the Galactic Council, establish formal treaties, and follow procedures that could take decades to complete. Echo had been expecting this objection. That's why we're not just going to give her a standard first contact scenario. We're going to give her a problem that requires immediate action and creative thinking. Something that plays to humanity's strengths while making your people look like valuable but manageable allies. What kind of problem? Echo walked over to her tactical display, pulling up real-time sensor data from across the solar system. Your observation posts have been monitoring more than just human activity, right? You've been tracking everything in this region of space comets, asteroids, solar flares, quantum fluctuations. Of course, comprehensive environmental monitoring is essential for accurate behavioral analysis. Have you detected anything that could pose a genuine threat to human colonies or shipping routes? Not immediately dangerous, but something that could become a problem if left unaddressed? Observer's form brightened as it accessed the collective memory of its species. There is an asteroid cluster in the outer system that will intersect with major shipping lanes in approximately 8 months. The gravitational perturbations from Jupiter's orbit have been slowly shifting their trajectory for the past several years. Perfect. Here's what we do. Your people withdraw from their observation posts as planned, leaving behind evidence of your presence. When Admiral Chun makes contact with your diplomatic representative, your people reveal that you've been monitoring the asteroid cluster and offer to share the tracking data as a gesture of goodwill. Echo began sketching out the scenario on her tactical display, showing the movement of human ships, alien positions, and the asteroid threat. Chan gets to be the hero who not only successfully negotiated with an alien species, but also secured valuable information that protects human lives. Your people get credited with preventing a potential disaster, which establishes you as benevolent partners rather than unknown threats. And the asteroids themselves? Humanity handles the problem using our own technology and methods, with assistance from data your people provide. We get to demonstrate our capabilities while working cooperatively with a new alien species. Everyone wins. Observer cycled through several configurations before responding. This plan has a high probability of success, but it requires precise timing and coordination. If any element fails, the consequences could be severe. Welcome to humanity, Echo said with a laugh. We live our entire lives making it up as we go along, and somehow managing to land on our feet. Trust me, this is exactly the kind of situation we're good at. Echo's communication console chimed with an urgent message from long-range sensors. She opened the transmission and felt her confidence waver slightly as she read the contents. Observer, we may have a problem. The Defiance just dropped out of FTL about 6 hours ahead of schedule, and she's not alone. Admiral Chun brought 3 heavy cruisers and a full wing of fighters. They're moving fast, and they're not following standard approach protocols. Observers' form darkened with concern. This suggests Admiral Chun believes she is facing a significant military threat. Echo pulled up the tactical situation, studying the approaching human fleet. The ships were in full combat formation, weapons powered and shields raised. Whatever intelligence Chun had received about the alien presence, she was clearly preparing for the possibility of armed conflict. How long before they reach your nearest observation post? 4 hours, 17 minutes. Echo stared at the display, feeling the weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders again. Her carefully crafted plan depended on precise timing and controlled circumstances. The early arrival of a hostile military force changed everything. Observer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If Admiral Chun orders an attack on one of your installations, will your people defend themselves? We will protect our personnel. Yes. And what would that look like to human observers? Observer was silent for a long moment. The complete annihilation of Admiral Chun's fleet within approximately 0.3 seconds. Echo closed her eyes, imagining the consequences of such an event. The destruction of humanity's most advanced warships by unknown alien weapons would trigger every possible military response. Earth's entire space-based defense network would mobilize. Panic would spread through human colonies across dozens of star systems. Any chance of peaceful coexistence would be destroyed. Okay, she said, opening her eyes with newfound determination. Change of plans. We're not going to wait for Admiral Chun to find your observation posts. We're going to bring her here, to my monitoring station, where we control the circumstances and the narrative. How do you propose to accomplish this? Echo moved to her emergency communication array, beginning to craft a transmission that would fundamentally alter the course of human history. By doing what humans do best when faced with an impossible situation, I'm going to improvise. She began typing a message to Admiral Chun, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency as she constructed the most important lie of her career. Admiral, this is Communications Operator Echo Patel, aboard Monitoring Station Gamma 7. I have successfully established peaceful contact with representatives of an alien species calling themselves the Observers. They have requested direct communication with Terran military leadership to discuss matters of mutual interest. The aliens appear benevolent and possess advanced technology that could benefit humanity. Request immediate rendezvous at my coordinates for formal first contact protocols. Echo paused before sending the message, knowing that she was committing herself to a course of action that would either save humanity from a disastrous first contact scenario or destroy her career and possibly her life. Observer watched silently as she wrestled with the decision. There's no going back once I send this, she said aloud. I'll be taking responsibility for the first official contact between humanity and an alien species. If this goes wrong, it'll be my fault. And if it goes right? Echo smiled, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with attempting something that should be impossible. If it goes right, I'll have helped humanity take its first step toward becoming something greater than it ever imagined possible. She hit the transmission key. The message raced through space toward Admiral Chun's fleet, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species. Echo watched the confirmation indicator light up, knowing that she had just committed herself to the most important performance of her life. Observer, I need you to do something for me. When Admiral Chun arrives, I need you to be exactly what she expects an advanced alien species to be: wise, benevolent, slightly mysterious, and impressive enough to establish your credibility without being threatening enough to trigger a military response. You want us to play a role. I want you to be the alien species that humanity needs you to be, rather than the alien species that you actually are. Observer's form brightened with what Echo had learned to recognize as deep approval. This is perhaps the most human approach to diplomacy we have ever encountered. You are solving the problem of incompatible expectations by creating a shared fiction that serves everyone's interests. Exactly. And if we do this right, humanity will have decades to grow and develop before we need to face the truth about our cosmic destiny. Echo began preparing her station for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether humanity entered the galactic community as partners or as subjects. Outside her observation window, Observer's impossible vessel hung in the darkness like a promise of wonders yet to come. The future of human civilization rested on her ability to improvise a solution to a problem that had no solution. In other words, it was exactly the kind of situation humans were built for. Admiral Sarah Chun arrived at monitoring station Gamma 7 with the kind of precision that had made her legendary throughout the Terran Deep Space Course. Her fleet dropped out of FTL at exactly the coordinates Echo had specified. Deployed in a defensive formation, it could rapidly shift to offensive if necessary, and established communication protocols that followed first contact procedures to the letter. Echo watched through her station's external cameras as the Admiral's shuttle approached, flanked by two escort fighters that maintained weapons-ready status throughout the approach. Chun was taking no chances, even with what appeared to be a peaceful diplomatic mission. "Remember," Echo said to Observer, who had assumed a form that looked like a tall, graceful humanoid figure in flowing robes, "you're an advanced but peaceful species, interested in establishing diplomatic relations. You've been observing humanity from a distance, and you're impressed by our potential. You want to offer technological assistance and cultural exchange. And if Admiral Chun asks about our true capabilities or long-term intentions, be mysterious but reassuring. Suggest that there are wonders in the universe that humanity isn't ready to understand yet, but that we show great promise for future growth." Echo adjusted her uniform and checked her appearance in the reflection of her console screen. The key is to make her feel like she's in control of the situation, while actually giving her exactly the information we want her to have. Observer's form shifted slightly, adopting subtle visual cues that suggested wisdom and benevolence. This deception serves the greater good, but it feels uncomfortable. We are not accustomed to misrepresenting ourselves to other sapient species. Think of it as translation rather than deception, Echo suggested. You're presenting the truth in a way that humans can understand and accept. The full truth about the cosmic transition and humanity's unique characteristics would cause panic and potentially destructive behavior. By giving us time to develop naturally, you're actually helping us become ready for that knowledge. The airlock chimed as Admiral Chun's shuttle completed docking procedures. Echo took a deep breath, knowing that the next few hours would determine the course of human history. Admiral Chun entered the monitoring station with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. She was a compact, intense woman in her 50s. With graying hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings. Immediately upon entering, behind her came two aides and a xenolinguistic specialist, all maintaining the alert posture of military personnel in a potentially dangerous situation. "Operator Patel," Admiral Chun said, her voice crisp and professional. "I've read your reports. This is an unprecedented situation." "Yes, ma'am." "Admiral, I'd like you to meet Observer, a representative of the species that calls itself the Collectors of Experiences." Observer rose from its chair, its movements graceful and deliberately non-threatening. "Admiral Chun, we are honored to make formal contact with representatives of humanity. Your species has impressed us with its adaptability and courage." Admiral Chun studied Observer carefully, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. "Observer, that's an interesting name. How long have your people been monitoring human activity?" "We have maintained discrete observation posts in your solar system for approximately 3 Earth years. We were curious about your species' unique approach to problem solving and survival." Echo watched Admiral Chun's reaction carefully, seeing the slight tension in her shoulders ease, as Observer's words suggested a limited relatively recent presence rather than long-term surveillance. What makes humanity unique in your experience? Chan asked. Observer's form shifted slightly, conveying thoughtfulness. Most sapient species we encounter follow predictable patterns of development. They optimize their technology, minimize risk, and seek stability above all else. Humans do not. You actively embrace chaos, turn disadvantages into advantages, and solve problems by changing the fundamental parameters of the challenge you face. Admiral Chan's expression showed the first hint of satisfaction. You're saying we don't think like other species. We are saying you think in ways that consistently surprise us. Your approach to technological development, for example, maintains dozens of different solutions to the same problem, rather than converging on optimal designs. This should be inefficient, but instead, it makes your civilization remarkably resilient. Echo could see Admiral Chun processing this information, recognizing the implicit compliment while maintaining professional skepticism. And what does your species want from humanity? Cultural exchange, mutual benefit. We possess advanced technology that could accelerate human development, but we believe your unique perspectives could offer insights that our own civilization lacks. Observer paused, as if considering how much to reveal. We have grown, perhaps, too comfortable with efficiency and optimization. Observing humanity has reminded us of the value of ... creative chaos. Admiral Chun exchanged glances with her xenolinguistic specialist, who nodded slightly. Echo recognized the signal the specialist was confirming that observers' communication patterns and behavior were consistent with a genuinely alien intelligence rather than an elaborate deception. What kind of technological assistance are you offering? Sean asked. Observer gestured, and the air between them filled with holographic displays showing technical specifications that made Echo's enhanced mind real. Medical technology that could eliminate most human diseases. Energy systems that could provide clean, abundant power for centuries. Manufacturing processes that could transform raw materials into any desired configuration. But Echo noticed that Observer was carefully limiting the displays to technologies that were advanced but comprehensible, avoiding anything that would suggest capabilities beyond human understanding. These advances could improve life for billions of humans, Admiral Chun said, studying the displays with obvious interest. What would you want in return? The opportunity to learn from your methods, Observer replied. To study how humans approach challenges that would stymie more conventional thinking. We believe this knowledge would benefit both of our species. Admiral Chun was silent for several minutes, weighing the implications of what she'd learned. Echo could almost see her mind working through the political, military, and economic consequences of formal contact with an advanced alien species. Observer, would your people be willing to establish a formal diplomatic relationship with the Terran government? Ambassadorial exchanges, technological cooperation agreements, that sort of thing? We would be honored to do so, Admiral. However, we would prefer to proceed gradually, perhaps beginning with limited cultural and scientific exchanges, allowing both of our species time to understand each other before committing to larger agreements. Echo felt a surge of relief. Observer was handling the negotiation perfectly, offering exactly what Admiral Chun needed to report a successful first contact while avoiding any commitments that would interfere with the long-term observation mission. Admiral Chun's communication device chimed with an urgent message. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened slightly. Operator Patel, Observer, we may have a situation. My sensor operators are detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system. Are these connected to your people's presence here? Observer's form dimmed slightly, conveying what appeared to be embarrassment. We apologize, Admiral. Our observation posts generate quantum field distortions as a byproduct of their monitoring equipment. We did not realize these effects would be detectable by human sensors. How many observation posts are we talking about? 17 facilities, positioned to provide comprehensive monitoring of human activity throughout your solar system. Admiral Chun's expression hardened. That's a significant intelligence operation. Why didn't you reveal this immediately? Echo held her breath, recognizing the critical moment. If Admiral Chun interpreted the observation posts as evidence of espionage or hostile surveillance, the entire diplomatic contact could collapse into military confrontation. Observer's response was perfectly calibrated to diffuse the tension. Admiral, imagine that you encountered a species whose behavior was completely unlike anything in your experience. Would you announce your presence immediately? Or would you first try to understand their nature and determine the safest approach for contact? Admiral Chun considered this for a moment. I'd gather intelligence first. This is precisely what we did. Our observation posts were never intended as permanent installations, but rather as temporary facilities to help us understand human psychology and social patterns before attempting direct contact. And now that contact has been established, the observation posts are no longer necessary. We would be willing to withdraw them as a gesture of good faith, or to convert them into joint research facilities, if such cooperation would be beneficial to both parties. Echo watched Admiral Chun process this offer, seeing the moment when the Admiral realized she could report not only successful first contact, but also the negotiation of alien withdrawal from intelligence positions throughout the solar system. That would be ... acceptable, Admiral Chun said. Observer, I believe we have the foundation for a productive relationship between our species. Observer's form brightened with apparent pleasure. We share that hope, Admiral. There is one additional matter we wish to discuss with you, a potential service we could provide as a demonstration of our goodwill. What kind of service? Observer gestured again, and the holographic displays showed the asteroid cluster that Echo had identified earlier. Our monitoring equipment has detected a cluster of asteroids that will intersect with human shipping lanes in approximately 8 months. The collision risk to your vessels and installations could be significant. Admiral Chun studied the projection, her military mind immediately grasping the implications. This could threaten several major trade routes. Indeed, we would be honored to share our tracking data with your stellar navigation authorities. With sufficient advance warning, the threat could be easily managed using existing human technology. Echo watched Admiral Chun's expression change as she realized the full implications of Observer's offer. Not only had humanity made successful first contact with an advanced alien species, but that contact had also resulted in information that could prevent a major disaster. Observer, on behalf of humanity, I accept your offer of cooperation. I believe this marks the beginning of a beneficial relationship between our species. As the formal diplomatic dance continued, Echo felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her impossible plan had worked exactly as intended. Admiral Chun would return to Earth with news of successful first contact, alien withdrawal from intelligence positions, and actionable information that would save human lives. Observer's people would continue their study of humanity, while maintaining the fiction that they were simply another spacefaring species, interested in cultural exchange, and humanity would have decades to develop and mature before learning the truth about its cosmic destiny. God, it was, Echo reflected, exactly the kind of chaotic, improvised solution that made humans unique in the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, Echo Patel stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed diplomatic research station, Gamma 7 Alpha, watching human and observer ships work together to redirect the asteroid cluster that threatened the shipping lanes. The cooperative effort had become a symbol of successful interspecies collaboration. Exactly as she and Observer had planned out, the irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity was celebrating its first great achievement in partnership with an alien species, completely unaware that the aliens in question possessed technology that could have eliminated the asteroid threat by simply wishing it out of existence. The deception continues to serve both of our species well, Observer said, materializing beside her in its preferred humanoid form. Over the months of working together, it had become more skilled at maintaining consistent appearance and mannerisms. That put humans at ease. It's not really deception anymore, Echo replied, watching a human cargo hauler maneuver carefully around an observer monitoring vessel. Your people are genuinely helping us develop our capabilities. The technological assistance you've provided has advanced human engineering by decades, but we continue to conceal our true nature and the greater purpose of our presence here. Echo turned away from the observation window to face her alien companion. Do you think we're making a mistake, keeping humanity ignorant of the cosmic transition that's coming? Observer's form shifted slightly, a subtle indication of deep consideration. Your species has exceeded our expectations in every measurable category. The technological advances you have achieved in just 6 months of cooperation suggest that humans adapt to new paradigms even more rapidly than our models predicted. That doesn't answer my question, because the answer is complex. Knowledge of the coming transition would undoubtedly accelerate human preparation for the changes ahead, but it would also fundamentally alter your species' natural development pattern. The chaos and adaptability that make humans unique might be lost if you began optimizing specifically for survival of the transition. Echo nodded, understanding the dilemma. It was the same paradox that had destroyed the other 36 species observers people had encountered. Success and preparation bred rigidity, and rigidity bred extinction. How much time do we really have? She asked. Our latest calculations suggest the transition will begin in approximately 740 Earth years, rather than the 800 we initially estimated. The quantum field fluctuations are accelerating. Echo felt a chill at the news. 60 years was a significant adjustment when measured against the span of civilizations. Will that change your recommendation about when to inform humanity? It reinforces our belief that gradual revelation is the optimal approach. Your species needs time to internalize the technologies and concepts that will be essential for survival, but not so much time that you lose the fundamental characteristics that enable adaptation. Echo's communication device chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Chun, now serving as Director of Interspecies Affairs for the Terran government. The message was brief but significant. Patel, observer, please report to Conference Room Alpha. We have a situation that requires your expertise. Echo and Observer made their way through the corridors of the diplomatic station, passing human technicians working alongside observer specialists on projects it would have been impossible just months earlier. The integration had proceeded smoothly, largely because observers' people had been careful to present technologies that enhanced human capabilities without replacing human decision-making. Admiral Chun was waiting in the conference room along with Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of Terran Xenological Studies, and Captain Rex Morrison, commander of the station's security forces. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a star map of the local galactic region, with several areas highlighted in red. We've received concerning intelligence from the Galactic Council. Admiral Chun began without preamble. 3 separate first contact scenarios in neighboring sectors have resulted in the complete disappearance of emerging sapient species. Echo studied the display, noting the locations of the vanished civilizations. Disappeared how? Dr. Kim answered. No distress signals, no signs of conflict, no evidence of natural disasters. The species simply stopped communicating with the outside galaxy. When Council survey teams investigated, they found empty worlds and abandoned technology, but no indication of what happened to the populations. Observers' phone darkened with what Echo had learned to recognize as serious concern. How recently did these disappearances occur? The most recent was just 3 weeks ago, Captain Morrison replied. A species called the Veltar that had achieved interstellar flight about 50 years ago. They were in the process of establishing their first off-world colonies when all communication ceased. Echo felt a growing sense of unease. What does the Galactic Council think is causing this? Admiral Chun exchanged glances with Dr. Kim before responding. They don't know. That's why they're asking all member species to review their first contact protocols and report any unusual activities in their sectors. Observer was silent for a long moment, its form cycling through several configurations that suggested intense internal communication. When it finally spoke, there was something different in its tone, an edge of concern that Echo had never heard before. Admiral, we must share information that we have previously kept confidential. The disappearances you describe are consistent with a phenomenon we have observed before in other regions of the galaxy. Admiral Chun leaned forward intently. What kind of phenomenon? Species harvesting. There are entities in the galaxy that collect sapient civilizations for purposes we do not fully understand. They typically target species that have recently achieved interstellar capability, but have not yet established strong defensive alliances. The implications hit Echo like a physical blow. You're saying something is hunting newly spacefaring species? It appears so. The pattern suggests systematic collection rather than random predation. The harvesting entities seemed to prefer species that show particular characteristics: technological adaptability, rapid expansion, innovative problem-solving approaches. Dr. Kim went pale as she processed Observer's words. Characteristics like humanity possesses. Indeed, your species exhibits exactly the traits that appear to attract the attention of the harvesters. Admiral Chun stood up, pacing to the star. Map display. Observer, why didn't you warn us about this threat earlier? Observer's form dimmed with what appeared to be regret. We believed your species was still decades away from reaching the threshold that typically triggers harvester attention. The rapid advancement humans have achieved through our technological cooperation has accelerated your development beyond our projections. Echo felt a sick realization settling in her stomach. You're saying our partnership has made humanity a target. Your partnership with us has made humanity visible to entities that monitor galactic development patterns. Yes. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's greatest diplomatic and technological triumph had inadvertently painted a target on their species' back. Admiral Chun returned to her seat, her expression grim. How much time do we have? Unknown. The harvesting entities do not follow predictable schedules. They may arrive tomorrow, or they may wait years to confirm that humanity meets their collection criteria. Captain Morrison leaned forward. What do we know about their capabilities? Observer's form shifted to a configuration that suggested deep reluctance to continue. They possess technology that exceeds even our own understanding. Species that have attempted to resist collection have left no trace of their defensive efforts. It is as if they simply ceased to exist. Echo stood up abruptly, pacing to the observation window. Outside, human and observer ships continued their cooperative work, unaware that their partnership might have doomed both species. There has to be a solution, she said firmly. There's always a solution. We just have to find it. Echo, Admiral Chun said gently, we may be facing an enemy that is literally beyond our ability to comprehend or resist. Echo turned back to the room, feeling the familiar rush of determination that came with confronting impossible odds. Observer, in 47,000 years of observation, how many species have successfully avoided harvesting? None that we are aware of. But you said you've encountered 36 species with characteristics similar to humanity. What happened to them? Observer was silent for a long moment. They were among the species that disappeared. The weight of that revelation settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Humanity wasn't just facing an unknown threat. They were facing the same enemy that had eliminated every other species like them in recorded galactic history. As Echo stared out at the ships working together in the darkness of space, she felt something that surprised her. Hope. Observer, you said the harvesters target species with specific characteristics: technological adaptability, rapid expansion, innovative problem solving, right? Correct. And you said no species has successfully resisted collection. But have any species successfully avoided being targeted in the first place? Observer's form brightened with interest. That is an intriguing distinction. Species that do not meet the harvester selection criteria are typically ignored entirely. Echo felt pieces of a solution beginning to form in her mind. So the key isn't to fight the harvesters. The key is to make humanity look like something they don't want to collect. Admiral Chun caught on immediately. You're talking about camouflage. I'm talking about the most human solution possible, Echo said with growing excitement. We can't match their technology, so we don't try. Instead, we change the parameters of the problem entirely. Observer's form assumed a configuration of intense curiosity. How would you propose to disguise humanity's essential characteristics? Echo grinned, feeling the familiar thrill of attempting something that should be impossible. We don't disguise them. We weaponize them. From the personal logs of Admiral Sarah Chun, Director of Terran Interspecies Affairs, dated 5 years after first contact, the plan that Echo Patel proposed in that conference room has become the foundation of everything humanity has achieved in the past 5 years. It was insane, brilliant, and absolutely typical of our species. Approach to impossible problems. Rather than attempting to hide our technological advancement or military capabilities from the harvesting entities, we chose to make humanity appear to be exactly the opposite of what they were looking for. Working with Observer's people, we began a carefully orchestrated campaign of controlled chaos. We developed technologies that were deliberately inefficient but incredibly robust. We established colonies that looked like barely organized disasters, but were actually models of adaptive resilience. We created a military doctrine based on unpredictability and improvisation rather than optimal tactical responses. To any observer studying humanity from a distance, we appeared to be a species that had stumbled into interstellar capability through sheer luck rather than systematic development. Our cities looked chaotic, our technology seemed cobbled together from spare parts, and our decision-making processes appeared to be based more on intuition than logic. It was all carefully designed theater, and it worked. When the harvesting entities finally arrived in our space 3 years ago, they conducted what appeared to be routine scans of human civilization. According to observers monitoring, they classified humanity as a developmental accident, a species that had achieved interstellar capability through random chance rather than evolutionary adaptation. We were deemed unworthy of collection. Harvesters departed after 6 months of observation, apparently satisfied that humans represented nothing of value to their mysterious purposes. They never realized that our apparent chaos was actually a sophisticated survival strategy, or that our primitive technology was specifically designed to function under conditions that would cripple more advanced systems. Echo Patel's solution didn't just save humanity from collection, it ensured that we could continue developing our unique characteristics without external interference. The harvesters will not return to our region of space for at least several centuries, giving us time to prepare for the cosmic transition that observers people have warned us about. But perhaps most importantly, the experience taught humanity something crucial about our place in the galaxy. We learned that our greatest strength lies not in trying to match other species' capabilities, but in being so fundamentally different that we become impossible to predict or categorize. Observers people had begun sharing more detailed information about the coming quantum transition, carefully revealing the truth in stages that allow human civilization to adapt gradually. We now know that we have approximately 700 years to prepare for changes that will reshape the fundamental nature of reality itself. It's a daunting challenge, but it's exactly the kind of impossible problem that humans specialize in solving. Echo Patel, now Director of Strategic Adaptation Planning, has established protocols for maintaining humanity's essential chaos, while developing the technologies and social structures we'll need for long-term survival. Her motto, printed on the wall of her office, captures the essence of human nature. If you can't solve the problem, change the problem. As I compile these logs, I'm struck by how perfectly the past 5 years have demonstrated observers' original thesis about human uniqueness. Faced with extinction by forces beyond our understanding, we responded by becoming more human, not less. We embraced our chaos, weaponized our inefficiency, and turned our apparent weaknesses into survival advantages. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders that we can barely imagine. Ancient civilizations rise and fall according to cosmic rhythms that span millions of years. But somewhere in that immensity, one young species continues to thrive by refusing to follow anyone else's rules. We are human. We don't optimize, we adapt. We don't accept constraints, we redefine them. And when the universe presents us with impossible choices, we create impossible solutions. It's what we do. End of Admiral Chun's log entry from the collective memory archives of the observers. Subject: final analysis. Human survival potential. After 5 years of intensive study, we have concluded that humanity represents the most promising candidate for long-term galactic stewardship we have encountered in our 47,000 years of observation. The species' fundamental approach to problem-solving, what they term creative chaos, has proven to be not just a survival mechanism, but a form of cosmic adaptation that may be unique in the known galaxy. Their ability to turn apparent disadvantages into strategic advantages suggests they will not only survive the coming quantum transition, but may actually thrive during the period of universal instability. Most significantly, humanity has demonstrated the capacity to maintain its essential characteristics, even under extreme pressure to conform to galactic norms. The Harvester Crisis, which eliminated the 36 previously identified species with similar traits, instead strengthened human commitment to their chaotic approach to existence. We have observed them solve problems by changing the fundamental parameters of the challenge, survive threats by making themselves uninteresting to predators, and achieve technological advancement while maintaining the inefficient redundancy that ensures resilience. They represent evolution's answer to the question of how to remain adaptable in a universe that rewards optimization. Our recommendation: continue observation and support protocols. When the quantum transition begins, humanity should be prepared to assume stewardship of galactic civilization. Unlike previous inheritor species, humans show no tendency toward rigid optimization that would make them vulnerable to future cosmic changes. They are, in the most literal sense, survivors. Archive entry concluded.